wait. I need to try it again. Sorry. I'm sorry, right. Let me...
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'll try it again.
Are you sure you're back? Are you back at the right bit?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. On this week's instalment, when she's not in the habit of besting Nazis in the Austrian Alps, this thoroughly modern Willie can be found mixing sugar in with her medicine while she picks through a tongue cut and waiting for Mary to pop in. Can't do it. Julie Andrews, Hollywood Swingers.
That's right. That professional introduction means it's time for our favourite segment of the show.
That was cruel. You made me do that.
Hollywood Swingers, where we celebrate those Hollywood stars who've swung into music. This week, in case you missed it, our Hollywood Swinger is Julie Andrews. Paul, if you're capable...
Yes.
Are you okay?
I'm okay.
Did you miss any good jokes that you feel like we need to...
Okay.
Okay.
It's all good.
Paul's going to tell us now about Julie Andrews. I'm very excited.
Born Julia Elizabeth Wells on the 1st of October 1935, it was a Tuesday, in Walton-on-Thames in Surrey, to Mother Barbara, who was a pianist, and Father Ted Wells, not funny, a metal and woodwork teacher. Julie said that growing up she was particularly close to Ted, as he taught her to read, he taught her to write, and he played a very active role in her life, even when her parents divorced when the actress was just 4 years old. Julie's mother would remarry to Ted Andrews. She obviously had a thing for Ted's.
Okay.
He was an entertainer just like Barbara. He was into vaudeville. And seeing the potential talent in the youngster, her dad, Ted Wells, would send her to live with her mother and stepfather, whose name Julie was made to take against her wishes.
Oh.
Now, despite the artistic background, life was particularly hard for the Andrews, with the war still in full flow and income at a low. In addition to that, Andrew's stepfather was an alcoholic with a penchant for violence. As her family stage careers though started to take off, Andrews was sent for sponsored lessons, where it was found that the youngster was essentially a child prodigy with a singing voice that had a 4-octave range.
Julie Andrews?
Yeah, even at a young age.
That's wild.
I think her teachers claimed that she had perfect pitch. She says she doesn't, but I think that's just because Julie Andrews is full of class.
You have like a 1/7 of an octave range just now.
Yeah, there's no
There's
octaves
this
there.
note and that's it.
By 1945, at the age of 10, Andrews would start performing unbilled with her parents on stage, standing on a beer crate in order to reach the microphone. And she would even travel on tours around the UK with then fellow child entertainer Petula Clark.
That's wild, Paul. When I was a child entertainer and my parents made me go to pubs to do stand-up comedy, I used to stand on a beer crate.
There we are.
Oh, we have so much in common.
She would travel with Petula Clark, where they would entertain the troops, and they would actually sleep in the luggage racks of the train.
Oh.
But rather than be an arduous task, they said that was fun, an opportunity that not many children got at the time.
Yeah.
She got a big stage breakthrough at the age of 12, performing in a musical revue at the London Hippodrome for a year run. And then the next year, Andrews became the youngest ever solo performer in a royal variety show at the London Palladium.
Can I tell you something? So when I was a child performer at the age of 11, or maybe I was younger, I was very young, and it was between me and a girl who sang for the Royal Variety performance, and it went to the girl who sang.
You could have beaten Julie Andrews.
I could have, but I never. Oh well.
Now, it was around this time, though it was only publicly revealed decades later, but Andrews was told a devastating secret.
Oh no.
After being taken to perform at a family friend's house, she would speak with the owner of said house, and Andrews remembers there was something between them that she couldn't explain. On the drive home, her mum asked Andrews if she liked the man who she was speaking to which she replied, he seemed pleasant enough, before her mum blurted out that was her real dad, who she'd had a passionate affair with 14 years prior.
Was his name Ted?
No, maybe. So Andrews, though, forever saw Ted Wells as her dad and would spend as much time with him as possible. She didn't even know until her mother passed away that Wells knew that he wasn't her biological father, but he still loved her and raised her like his own.
Oh no, that's so sweet.
So whilst her personal life was going through some turmoil at that time, Andrew's professional life was going from strength to strength. She was performing in radio and television productions across the stage. alongside the stage, and while she was starring in the lead role of Cinderella, some American producers who were over on other business were told to go and see this youngster performing as Cinderella by none other than Hattie Jakes, who you may know from the Carry On films.
Of course I do. Hero.
These producers immediately fell in love with Andrews, and they took her at the age of only 18 to Broadway to star in the musical The Boyfriend.
She's but when you hear Julie Andrews' voice on those like original cast recordings, it's like crystal.
Yeah.
Before they could alter sound and, auto-tune and stuff like that.
Just perfect.
She's got the most beautiful voice ever, so I'm not surprised that people were taken by her.
Yeah.
She's also stunningly beautiful as well, on top of being incredibly talented.
And that show was a big hit.
Yeah.
And Andrews was lauded by critics. In 1955, she appeared in a TV movie called High Tower, singing with Bing Crosby.
Wow.
And then near the end of her year run on The Boyfriend, Andrews was approached to audition for a role in an upcoming new musical called My Fair Lady. Offered the part of Eliza Doolittle after her third reading, Andrews was pivotal in establishing the character, bringing much to it that stood the test of time.
Yeah.
Like, she essentially created that character.
She did create that character, and it's absolutely disgusting. Okay, fine.
Don't get
Paul's
ahead of
shaking
yourself.
his finger at me.
So the show opened to huge success, and off the back of this, Rodgers and Hammerstein wrote a television musical special of Cinderella specifically for Julie Andrews.
Yeah.
It was broadcast live in March 1955 to an estimated television audience of 107 million viewers.
That's insane.
Alongside the 1960s run of Camelot and Broadway, with Richard Burton, we spoke about it a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
Andrews was a massive star on Broadway. But that didn't seem to be enough for some. As casting took place for the 1962 film adaptation of My Fair Lady, Andrews was overlooked for the main role, despite actually being integral in its genesis, as the producer, Jack Warner, believed she wasn't a big enough name, instead casting Audrey Hepburn.
Can we talk about that for a second? Because the interesting thing about the casting of Audrey Hepburn is Audrey Hepburn, despite being incredibly beautiful and a great actress and a really tormented soul and a phenomenal person and a great humanitarian, wasn't a good singer.
No.
And they ended up having to get a ghost singer in to do her voice, the great Marnie Nixon. Now, the interesting thing about that is Marnie's only on-screen big role that she had was playing a nun in The Sound of Music.
Very good.
She was also a goose in Mary Poppins. She's the one who goes, "Oh, it's a jolly holiday with Mary."
So, but in perhaps the greatest stroke of serendipity ever, losing out on that role meant that Andrews was able to take a part that has went down in history.
Is it Sound of
Having
Music?
originally turned down the role due to being pregnant, Disney knew what Jack Warner didn't,
Oh, no.
and said they would wait for her to finally make her feature film debut
What?
in the role of Mary Poppins.
That was her feature film debut?
Yes.
No.
It became the then biggest box office draw in Disney history. The film was nominated for 13 Academy Awards. Andrews won a Golden Globe,
Yes.
the Academy Award,
Yes.
and a Grammy.
Yes.
It was in
She
competition
won a gag.
with My Fair Lady
Uh-huh.
for all of these awards.
They beat them.
Beat them.
Yes.
Andrews' acceptance speech at the Golden Globes ended like this. And finally, my thanks to a man who made a wonderful movie and who made all this possible in the first place, Mr. Jack Warner.
Oh, she's salty. She's sassy. I love her. Okay.
The next year, 1965, saw Andrews star in the film adaptation of another musical, one that's close to your heart, Ashley, with The Sound of Music. Imagine that 1-2 punch in the space of 2 years.
Mary Poppins, then The Sound of Music. She was the soundtrack to not just a generation of children, generations of children.
Yeah.
Because we all got Mary Poppins. We all got The Sound of
100%.
Music.
I mean, it was a major box office success. It was the highest grossing film of 1965.
Yep.
And it was at one point the highest grossing film ever, knocking Gone with the Wind from its top spot.
Thank goodness.
And that was a task.
Yeah.
It was a cultural phenomenon.
Yes.
Just like Mary Poppins. It's lived on throughout generations, like you said.
It did. I used to host Sing Along a Sound of Music, and it didn't matter what theatre we were in, how big a room it was always full with people ranging from little tiny children to people in their 80s and 90s in costume, ready to sing along. It will never go away. It is an iconic piece of cinematic history. It has so many good songs, so many good bits, such a big handsome Christopher Plummer ripping up that Nazi flag.
I think it was a hard movie to make as well. They said it always rained on set. Christopher Plummer, he was really worried about doing the movie because he thought it was too saccharine.
And hated children.
Yeah, they didn't enjoy it.
There was the big issue with the fact that some of the children were American and some were English, but see, back in the old days, nobody cared about that.
Nobody cares about that.
It was like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where you were like, where are these people from?
Where is the film based? If you adjusted it for inflation, The Sound of Music would be, today, the 6th highest grossing film of all time.
Then let's adjust it for inflation.
And whilst Andrew's career would never really hit these heights again, that's like saying climbing K2 after hitting the peak of Everest isn't impressive. With her 1966 appearance in the Hitchcock film Torn Curtain and the 1967 film Thoroughly Modern Millie.
Love it.
Andrews at the time had the first and second biggest hits in Universal Pictures history.
Great.
Now, many of her future films would be under the direction of her second husband, the great director Blake Edwards, and her performance in 1982's Victor Victoria with Blake won her another Oscar nomination and a Golden Globe win.
It's one of my favourite films.
And it was after a Broadway run of the same production in 1995 that Andrews showed her true class when, after being the only cast member to receive a Tony nomination, she declined it out of respect for her fellow castmates.
Oh, she's even a nice person.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sadly, in 1997, a botched vocal surgery led to the loss of Andrew's singing voice.
Oh.
And that led to her refusal to sing on camera for several years. But she never let that stop her career, and she made fans out of a whole new generations with roles in the likes of the Princess Diaries films.
Yeah.
She voiced Queen Lillian in a host of Shrek movies. She played Gru's mother in the Minions movies. As well as earning a damehood in 2000. She even showed her class again by turning down an appearance in the recent Mary Poppins sequel film. She didn't want to take anything away from Emily Blunt. But she also showed that she still got it by being the narrator of the particularly raunchy Netflix hit Bridgerton at the age of 85.
I'm getting weepy because she's so great and everything she's done is brilliant.
So now to tonight's song. And whilst we could play the obvious crowd pleasers, that would be an instant 100. Let's go out of our comfort zone. Just a bit.
Yeah.
With this Julie Andrews cover of a James Bond classic.
Yes.
But will this national treasure prove that nobody does it better?
Nobody does it better. It makes me feel sad for the rest. Nobody does it half as good as you. Baby, you're the best. I wasn't looking, somehow you found me. I tried to hide from your love light, like heaven above me. The man who loves me is keeping all my secrets safe tonight. Nobody does it better. Sometimes I wish someone could. Nobody does it quite the way you do. Did you have to be so good? that you hold me. Whenever you hold me, there's some kind of magic inside you. It keeps me from running. Just keep it coming. How'd you learn to do the things you do? And nobody does it better. Makes me feel sad for the rest. Nobody does it half as good as you. Baby, you're the best. Baby, you're the best.
That was Julie Andrews with Nobody Does Better. I love that, Paul. Here on the Ashley Storrie Show, we judge our Hollywood swingers on a scale of 1 to 100 Kenny Rogers roasters, 1 being the worst, 100 being the best, and mine is 100. There is no... I loved the fact she sang it as Julie Andrews in Julie Andrews' voice, and usually you have to find like a good comedian who can do impersonations to hear her sing weird songs. Oh, I love that. 100 Kenny Rogers roasters. Paul, what was your score for her?
It's got to be 100, doesn't it?
It's got to be 100. It's got to be, or so you'd think. Colin and Brenda are completely uncertain about that one, but tending towards a higher score, so it's 65 from us. Of course, if it was Feed the Birds, then it would have been 25,000 or 25 million. No, we couldn't play you one of our...
Judge the singer, not the song.
Judge the singer, but also judge the song because it's Julie Andrews singing a Bond song like Julie Andrews and saying she's got a wet mouth the whole time. It's great. She's like... so good.
Well, you're supposed to have a wet mouth when it comes to James Bond.
You're true. Jane Jones says, come on, who dares give Julie any less than 100 Kenny Rogers roasters? Get in touch with us via text at 0295. Let us know your score for Julie Andrews. Hi, Ashley and Paul. Davey and Joan from Helensburgh say, Julie Andrews, what can we say? No worries. 100 Kenny Rogers roasters from us. Brilliant show as usual. Thank you so much, Davey and Joan from Helensburgh. Right.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
It seemed pretty obvious this year who our top contenders were for King of the Swinger.
I know my top 3.
Is this one of them?
Julie Andrews, Mel Brooks and Richard Pryor.
There you are.
They're my top 3 this year so far. I was listening to Mel Brooks as I drove in. And I was singing, ooh, it's good to be the king. And my dad was like, why do you listen to that weird song? And I was like, it's great. It's my favourite. And it's like 9 minutes when you listen to the full version.
It's really long.
Yeah, it's a really long song. But I like it. Get in touch with us. 80295. Let us know your score for Julie Andrews. You can also email us. What's the email, Paul?
It's Ashley Storrie Show at bbc.co.uk.
Right, let's have a wee palate cleanser. This was number 1 when Glasgow Joiner was born. It's Human League, Don't You Want Me?